Case 17 of the Mumonkan. The national teacher calls 3 times. The national teacher called to his attendant 3 times, and the attendant answered 3 times. The national teacher said, "I thought I had transgressed against you, but you too had transgressed against me." Mumon's commentary. The national teacher called 3 times, and his tongue dropped to the ground. The attendant answered 3 times, and softening his light, he gave it out. The national teacher, as he got old and was feeling lonely, pushed the cow's head down to the grass to feed her. The attendant would simply not accept it. Even delicious food cannot attract a full stomach. Now tell me, how did they transgress? When the nation is at peace, men of talent are respected. When the family is well off, the children maintain their status. Mumon's poem. An iron collar with no hole, he has to wear it. It is no easy matter. The trouble passes on to his descendants. If you want to support the gate and sustain the house, you must climb the mountain of swords with bare feet. Welcome, everybody, to Zazenkai at Blue Mountain Zendo. Today's koan is very interesting, and to me, very deep, with limitless depth. The national teacher here, or also Kokushi is the Japanese name. And it refers to the emperor's teacher. So when we say the national teacher, we're really talking about the emperor's teacher, and in this case we're talking about Master Nenyo Echo of Namyo. Master Echu was a Dharma heir of the 6th patriarch, Eno. And the attendant here is thought to be Tangen Oshin, who is Echu's Dharma heir, but we're not quite sure. But since he only had one Dharma heir and had a very strong bond with this heir, we are thinking that it is none other than Master Ochin. Master Echu would go on to train for 40 years after his awakening at a small mountain temple called Kokanji. And this was located in the Suso Valley. After all these years of practice, Emperor Shukuso got word of Master Echu's notoriety and sent to him to come to the capital city and teach him. And you know, this was very common at the time, and it really isn't that different from the Renaissance period, where you had kings and queens who ruled various territories, who sought approval from the church, and with that approval came kind of even more power and more authenticity. So it was very common at this time for the emperors to call kind of the cream of the crop when it came to Zen practitioners and Confucius practitioners and Taoist practitioners to the capital city to teach. But even with this great prestigious invitation, Echu respectfully declined several times. You know, to whether he thought he wasn't ready, or he just was unsure. I guess he'll only know. But it does say that he actually turned down the emperor a few times. And the last time that he was asked to come and teach at the capital city, he actually did agree. Finally, he agreed. But at this temple, Kokanji, that he had trained with, he trained with a Dharma mother by the name of Seizan. And Seizan, it says, was Eshu's Dharma brother. So it doesn't really say that he was Eshu's teacher. It's very unlikely. They probably were, you know, two monks, dedicated monks, who were, you know, living in this temple and helping each other with the responsibilities of its upkeep and the parishioners that were part of it. So it's said here, though, that Seizan was not fond of this idea of Eshu going to the capital city, and basically said it's just not a good idea. And it got to the point where he said, okay, you know what, if you go, I just want nothing to do with you. You know, and who knows what the reason was. You know, it's such a small temple and only two running it. You know, I can tell you here that there's really, you know, only two of us that are running it, and sometimes it's very burdensome and difficult. So it could have just been that he didn't want to see Eshu go, that Eshu was really an asset to the temple. But pretty much this is the last that we hear of Seizan. We don't hear of him anymore after he kind of just asked Eshu to please not go, and he went. So that's the last time that we hear about him. So this was in 759 when Eshu moved to the capital city and was actually given the title of the national teacher. He lived out in the city, dying at well over 100 years old. So he had quite a long life and quite a number of years teaching. It said that he died in 775. Now think about this, one Dharma heir after all of these years of practice. So I think this really says something about Eshu's character, you know, and about what he was looking for, and about the quality that he was looking for in an heir. And, you know, I would kind of project a little bit that you know, maybe if his Ocean hadn't come around, that he wouldn't have had a Dharma heir at all and would have been fine with it. And to me, that is very admirable, you know, than just throwing titles at people in order to try to keep your lineage alive. So it said that, you know, during this time when he was teaching the emperor, living in the capital city, that the emperor was so fond of him that he would actually go and push his cart around town. Now this is unheard of. When we say cart, I mean this is like carriages that would, you know, take him from here and there. You could see like the emperor basically pushing this monk around town. So we know that there was a great deal of respect for Eshu here, both by the emperor and probably just by the community in general. He was probably seen as very much a Dharma treasure. Now, Eshu's attendant here, and I'll say Inji because that's what we say at Blue Mountain Zendo. We don't really say attendant. We use the term Inji, as was traditional at Daibusatsu when talking about the Roshi's attendant. Now his name was Tangen Ocean, and we'll just call him Ocean in short, Master Ocean. And Master Ocean at this time was the senior student of Eshu's, and as I said before, would go on to become his Dharma heir and take over abbotship of Eshu's temple in the capital city called Tangen Monastery. So getting back, that's the history of it, which I think is important to know, but getting to the heart of the koan now. So the national teacher calls 3 times, and his attendant answers 3 times. Inji, yes. Inji, yes. Inji, yes. So Eshu shouts into the abyss 3 times, and 3 times a seamless echo follows from Ocean. Yes. Now there's really several koans which point to the tools of this koan. You know, and these point to kind of a very subtle and mysterious aspect of something redundant. or something that seems ordinary. And I say redundant, seemingly redundant. You know, and in this, it's not that we're looking, you know, within these three calls for something mysterious or some magical key that's going to open. It's much more dynamic and much more subtle than that. You know, so the only thing really left to do in this koan, as with any koan, is to step in the shoes of Echu and to step in the shoes of Ocean and to call out and to reply. Not so much around here anymore. I guess maybe we've become a little bit lazy, but the training at Daibusatsu, when somebody asked something of you, no matter what it was, you know, it always was answered with "Hey!" Every time. "Hey!" You know, and it wasn't necessarily that you were saying yes, but that you were responding in a very open and fluid manner. You were meeting what was needed or presented in the moment in a very seamless way. And there's many different kinds of height. And just like Ocean's yes, you know, if we heard, you know, maybe the same person being asked something over and over and hear him go, height, 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 we'd probably think that, you know, he's just continually saying the same thing or continually saying yes, and leave it at that. But there's something very subtle in each of those replies. And there's something very dynamic and subtle that is going on in Master Echu's Inji and his Ocean's reply of yes. Imagine if Ocean was not a very adamant practitioner, you know, and maybe he was caught up in other things, you know, and he probably, you know, at this time, as I said, he was a senior student at Dharma Air, so, you know, he probably had a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things going on, and being, you know, the shika, the senior monk of a large monastery, probably had a great deal on his plate. But yet he answers yes, without any hesitation, 3 times. Now, imagine if he didn't do that, and imagine if he was so caught up in his responsibilities, or he was caught up in the words, or the dynamics, or his frustrations, or his internal dialogue. You know, maybe it would go like this: Inji, oh man, I'm so busy. Yeah! Inji, yes! You said yes. Inji. Now, if this would have happened, what about this koan? What is in that contrast there between somebody who seamlessly echoes back what's offered, perfectly echoes back what's offered, compared to somebody that is entangled in words and is removed from the activity of the moment. So we see, you know, much different, and many times we are, you know, the second. Most of the times we are the second. You know, oh, I'm so busy. Oh, zazen. Oh, I'm so busy. Yes, I'll go. You know, or sutra study, or you know, now I have to do some mood practice. Yes, you know, many times we're like that. And it's really the spirit, and it's really the depth of practice which really allows us to get to the point where we are open enough, and we have practiced enough, and we are just beginning to understand enough that we can answer, hi every time, or answer yes, when called upon, without being caught up in our own ideas, or our own preferences, or our own likes or dislikes, or our irritability with being called in the first place, no matter if it's our responsibilities at home or in the Zendo, or in relationships at home or in the Zendo. Being open enough and practicing enough to be able to answer those calls when called upon is imperative. Now, in Shivayama's translation, it says that Oshin read his mind, his being Etchu's mind. And this to me really stuck out because it's something that I feel is very intimate, and I've seen it, and other people have pointed it out too, that it really takes a great deal of trust and openness, and I use this word openness, this receptivity to the call, this receptivity to whatever is needed within the moment. And it really takes a great deal of practice in order to create the trust and openness needed. Now, I'm not just saying between a teacher and a student, as obviously between Master Etchu and Oshin, there was a great deal of practice time together, and a great deal of respect, and probably a great deal of fondness. I know probably a great deal of fondness between a teacher and a student, which it should be. But beyond that, an openness and a receptivity to one's essential nature, or let's say the essential nature. And when he said Oshin read his mind, meaning Etchu, it means that, Etchu basically called out, offered something, and wanted to see if Master Oshin would be able to respond appropriately. And not just with his yes, but that subtle depth of that answer, of that, of that yes. And obviously the koan's very fluid, so he was able to do that. And we can see this the longer that we practice, and and a lot of times that bleeds over into the teacher and student relationship. This kind of receptivity to the moment, this ability to kind of enter into this essential nature and be absolutely open and unimpeded to kind of move with the world around you. And it's really this trust and openness, as I said before, that really begins to bleed over, and we are able to meet other people at that level. We are able to align ourselves with that consciousness as offered from a teacher. Kind of thinking, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the teacher is kind of offering the standard, or being the bar, and having to meet that bar. And it's not that it is the teacher's bar, but the teacher is familiar with the territory and with the consciousness and the space Therefore, the example is given, and the student's job is to align with it and to embody it. And when the student does that, then it's not necessarily that they bond or align with the teacher, but essentially a teacher is aligned in the essential nature. They bond and align in the essential nature, so they basically meet there. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when it says read his mind, that's very much what came to me in this koan. And that's the idea of read his mind, aligned with him, met with him in this. And you know, the teacher within the tradition is really familiar with the terrain of the koan, having worked on the koan with a teacher before him. And you know, he or she really helps guide the student, you know, through the terrain, sabotages the student, encourages the student as needed, you know, along the way. And for most of us, as I said before, you know, looking at this koan, at least for myself, I should speak, it wasn't as fluid as between Master Etchu and Oshin. It took a couple days to get to that point, but you know, the reason why the koan, I think, is so useful and so powerful is that it did unfold seamlessly, and it's really the standard of what the koan points to. So Etchu manifested really his essential nature, and Oshin greeted him with ease, it says, with light, with his inner light. You know, he softened himself and he offered his essential nature, or you know, his internal light. You know, and we'd have to say too, you know, I pointed a little bit in the beginning, you know, that you know, Oshin and Etchu, you know, Etchu is a very renowned teacher at this time, and Oshin is his Dharma heir, and you know, has maturity, you know, in his own right along the way. So I mean, why are these two even bothering at this point in time? Which is a question. I mean, why the games? You know, why did Oshin reply and play? Because I'm sure he saw into it. He saw clearly what was going on. You know, why didn't he think, well, you know, I'm not interested in these games, or I know what he's doing, and then that's it. You know, why did he, you know, interact as if this was the first time, or why did he interact so openly and offer, you know, offer himself so completely to Eshin's, you know, calls? This is really an important thing to ponder, you know. And Master Etchu is really, you know, he's setting the stage for this kind of this play to unfold, and you know, those two are the actors, and he wants to see Oshin's performance, you know, on this stage that he's set. This is far from a haphazard, you know, just, well, I'm just going to see, you know, if Oshin can fathom the depths, or let's see what he'll do in this. There's more to it than that. It's not haphazard, you know, it's not fly by the night. There is some kind of jest in it, and probably a little joking throughout it, but it also is a very serious matter here. So the national teacher says, I thought I had transgressed against you, but you too had transgressed against me. Now we'll use this one, this translation of the Mumonkan, but I also wanted to offer another translation by Koan Yamada's translation. He said, I thought I was standing alone with my back to you, but now I find that you are standing alone with your back to me. One calling, one answering. One calling and one answering. You know? I thought I was standing with my back to you. I thought you were behind me. I thought I was alone. but now I find that you are standing alone with your back to me. Now I see that, you're there with me. Now I see that, you're receptive, and that you're aware, and that you're with me, and that you're carrying the burden, and that you're doing it with love and light and ease. It's interesting, and said, he couldn't say, you made me feel wonderful. I thought you had transgressed against me, but you too had transgressed. This is really what's being said. Now the word transgressed is very important in this, and is kind of the focal point of the koan. So we can't leave that out too. Transgressed. That's very important because there's two transgressions here, and we have to figure out where they are and by whom. So, in this transgression, there's really truly love here between these two. And again, the word sounds funny, and a lot of times the diction that's used in Zen is not the regular wording or diction. The transgression here, it is a transgression, yes, but again, there's more depth to it than just the kind of that superficial understanding of what a transgression is. So there is love here between these two in this transgression, in this willingness to both transgress together. In a common cause, together they bear this weight, and it's not just for themselves, it's not just this inside joke between them or this inside practice, but they're doing it for all of us. They're doing it for every single person here, sitting here and watching this. This is this wonderful selfless transgression of Zen students, and in this case, the transgression between Master Etsu and Master Osho. The relationship in practice must be upheld. Must be upheld. And there's no hesitation in either of these interactions. There's no pause. There's no hesitation. There is a willingness to uphold the honor of this dialogue that's going on and this exercise that is going on. Just a full willingness to do this, And both have muddied the water, purposely have muddied the water. Both have transgressed in such a giving manner. And it's how wonderful that our patriarchs were willing to slop through the mud to make sure that those seeds were sown for us, that they were there for us. How wonderful this is. And we too must carry this most noble burden, and assured that the seeds are planted for the next generation. Have to be willing to go out into that muck and mud. We have to be willing to transgress. We have to be willing to go into the pits and in the trenches. And when we do this, when we do the work, when we pick up that burden, when we carry it honorably and compassionately and lovingly for other people, there's something that is most unexpected and most wonderful that occurs. During session is a really good example of this. All of us uphold our duties, our roles, our responsibilities. Even if we don't have, a Zendo formal role or title or whatever, it really is irrelevant. We all have our duties and responsibilities to uphold as Zen students, sitting inside the Zenda or partaking in session. We all have, equally. Whether it's, to just, be a practitioner and to support one another, or to tenzo, or to teach, is really irrelevant. What's relevant is that we all uphold our roles and responsibilities in the Zendo as Zen students. And when we do this, we are able to truly sit with one another. And I say that, and it really sounds, kind of shallow. Oh, we're really able to relax and sit with one another. No. We are really able to let go and open up and let our light shine and really sit with one another, And kind of a microcosm of this is, after session is over and, we have that, at Choboji, they have that informal brunch. We've always had an informal lunch. But anyway, it really doesn't matter. But, after session, when the work is done, when we've carried the burden, when we've said, height, and we've done what was needed in the moment without hesitation, there is something that is most wonderful, where we are truly able to sit with each other as one. There's something very special about those moments after the work is done. Just like in, after the koan is over, and maybe towards the end of session, and we're sitting across from our teacher, and comes that laugh, that belly laugh, and the koan has some depth now. I don't think any koan is really answered, but we have some insight into the direction now, and then we just sit as two Dharma brothers, or Dharma brother and Dharma sister, and just bask in this wonder that is the fruit of just saying hi, just carrying the burden, It's truly at this time where we all are able to put down the load. And I mean truly put down the load and just be with one another. And without the work, without upholding the tools, without carrying the burden, without the roles and responsibilities and that openness and willingness and that loving nature and compassionate nature that hopefully compels us to do it, those moments would never exist. As Edo Roshi had once told me time and time again, things that are worth something cost something. So the commentary, the national teachers called 3 times, and his tongue dropped to the ground. The attendant answered 3 times, and softening his light, he gave it out. The national teacher, as he got old and was feeling lonely, pushed the cow's head down to the grass to feed her. The attendant would not simply accept it. Even delicious food cannot attract a full stomach. Now tell me, how did they transgress? So now we really get to the meat of the koan. Where's the transgressions here? So Master Etchu called 3 times, and each 3 times a most loving burden is created. And where most would step out of the way, Ocean steps right in front of it. Not one moment's hesitation. Yes! Yes! It is said that Master Etchu had thousands of students who would come to see him, but he has only one Dharma heir. This is a very difficult practice, and you hear it time and time again, you know, and, you know, we say to each other, oh yes, it's a very difficult practice, and, you know, zendos are not, you know, filled to the brim, and there's people waiting out on the porch. Our zendo is a very small one in an area, you know, that is not comfortable or is not open to a lot of different traditions just by reason of not being exposed to it. So it's something very new to this area. But even, you know, on the West Coast, in areas where there's, you know, larger Asian populations and a little bit more cultural diversity, you know, their numbers are not, you know, staggering either when we look at just the neighborhood church on the corner and their numbers. You know, so it's a very difficult practice, you know, and there's a reason, you know, there's a reason why there are not a lot of people in here. And there is a burden to be carried, but the fruits, you know, that are born are none other, you know, are beyond anything, at least personally, I can say that I've experienced anywhere else. You know, so a very difficult practice, but, you know, a burden that I am most willing to carry, and a burden that you are also willing to carry, or you wouldn't be here listening to this, taking on this burden of this practice. One of the things that a lot of Zen students don't know, and I say this just because I don't think I really had a great deal of insight into it, you know, until beginning to teach myself. And, you know, it really can become lonely and very difficult in that there is a heavy burden, and there aren't a lot of numbers, and there are a lot of people that come and go through, and you exert energy, and you do it, of course, willingly. Sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes, yes, it's like pulling teeth, but, you know, you still do it because it's what needs to be done, and truly behind it is, you know, compassion. You know, even if sometimes it is a little frustrating and you don't want to do it, you still do it. And there's a reason why you still do it. But what makes it all worthwhile, you know, is that wonderful feeling when seeing a student willingly take on the burden of practice. Or watching a student at that last day of session laugh or cry, or sitting with other people and getting to experience the fruits of everybody carrying the burden, and everybody investigating diligently, you know, the great matter, and diligently acting out their position, or their role or responsibility. It truly is a wonderful experience to watch a student demonstrate that burden. You know, it's one thing, you know, and I did it too, you know, oh, I'm such a dedicated Zen student in the beginning, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I'm going to go to Japan and study here and there and everything like that. But it's a totally different thing to really see somebody step in the way of calling out and saying yes, and demonstrating, you know, the practice, and meeting the teacher, and meeting them lovingly, playfully, and willingly, and being able to really demonstrate that they're carrying the burden. That's really what makes it all worthwhile, is to see that love and that true compassion and devotion in other people. You know, when a student takes on that yoke willingly, you know, and fully, you know, and you're able to bask in the rewards and benefits of that. It really is motivating and empowering for a teacher. And you really don't hear that much, you know, Zen. You don't really hear Zen, you know, Zen is the practice of cultivating true and universal love. I mean, that's not something you really hear a great deal, you know. But it's true. I mean, Zen is the practice of cultivating true love, or cultivating true and universal love. It truly is. And sometimes love is difficult, and sometimes love is a burden. A burdenless burden, nonetheless, but sometimes it is a burden, and we have to carry it, you know, and sometimes we have to remain open, you know, to what is required in order to bask in the reward, to bask in the light, you know, of love itself. You know, true love, true universal love. You know, and that smile or that laughter, you know, as you sit across the room from me or at the table, you know, that is how I see Zen practice. That is the nature of Zen practice, is universal love. It's demonstrated. The burden is taken on of that universal love and compassion. And we don't say it a lot of times, and it seems Zen can be kind of very militant, especially Rinzai kind of militant, and we may miss it. But all of this hard work is for something. It's not for looks. Hopefully it's not for looks. You know, it's not for ego. It's for true universal love. To cultivate it within ourselves, you know. To cultivate it outside of ourselves and others. And to cultivate it together. You know, this is what Zen practice is really about. And we carry that burden together out of love for one another. You know, Zen is that means to an end. You know, it's that means to that end to embody really what our heart yearns for. I mean, really deep down what our heart yearns for. That universal love, that universal unity. You know, and when we begin to see through that Zen container, I mean, the Zen container is so necessary, and that's part of the aspect of this koan, you know. But when we begin to see through it and we begin to see the necessity of it, you know, then we understand why we must carry this burden. That why we must, you know, continually answer with hai, or continually to call out, you know. Or to clean the incense bowl, or to do the chanting, or to do the sitting, or to maintain the teacher and student relationship, you know. When we really see the reason why these things are necessary, you know, then we understand them. And then we approach them not through kind of very stiff, you know, aggressive mindset, but a very loving and open mindset. Crisp, you know, but compassionately crisp. When the nation is at peace, men of talent are respected. When the family is well off, the children maintain their status. As I said before a moment ago, when the work is done, we can all kind of bask in the rewards of the house, or we can bask in the rewards of our practice, and we can kind of sit truly as equals, Passing the tools and the traditions down, we can enjoy really the hard work that stands behind upholding these things, And without this mutual work, without this, realization and upkeep, then the house really begins to fall apart. And it's, and kind of in a contrast, you could say, when men of talent are no longer respected, the house falls into disarray, and the family finds little to no sanctuary underneath its rafters. All of these things are dependent, All of these things are interconnected, And when we understand that, we see the necessity of continuing to practice in that open and vast manner, in that willing manner, in that jovial and compassionate manner, as ocean, and letting his, easing up and letting his light shine forth. It's that light which compels us. It's that light which stands behind the ritual and the content. It's at the root. But we have a lot of work to get there. And that's why the container exists, and that's why the tradition exists, and that's why the relationships exist, to help us get us there. And it's that they exist that we know there's true compassion and love. Because if there wasn't those things, no one would carry this container. No one would carry this container, Because there's not a lot of notoriety in being a monk. And as Genjo Osho always says, our mastery is staring at the floor. So, people don't last if there's not, that understanding of what lies behind, because it can be very, very difficult practice, So Mumonkan's poem, an iron collar with no hole, he has to wear it. It's no easy matter. The trouble passes on to his descendants. If you want to support the gate and sustain the house, you must climb a mountain of swords with bare feet. An iron collar with no hole. This is the burden of no burden. And we talked a little bit about what that was before, about that insight into why this burden needs to be carried. And if we truly have insight into it, it truly is a burdenless burden, But it's when our world becomes condensed. It's when our ego takes the forefront that all of a sudden we have difficulties with this practice and with carrying this burden. Because the ego's world is a very finite and a very small world. Therefore, it has limited resources, and it's always trying to conserve those resources. But coming from this other loving and compassion and open perspective, we have limitless resources. There is no thing that needs to conserve anything. Therefore, it's always height. Attendant, height, attendant, height. What next? Here, what next? What next? So this iron collar with no hole. There's really no way to fasten it to you. There's no way to get into it or to hold on to it. That's just like to say, the gate of Zen is a gateless gate. Very much the same thing. And practice and responsibilities can be very overwhelming for people at times. They are for me at times. I met a man the other day who said that, you know, I forgot what his practice was, but we had this long talk, and he told me, well, I'm not overwhelmed by anything anymore. And I said to him, you know, well, I didn't say it to him, but I thought to myself, you know, well, I kind of feel very bad for you. Because, you know, becoming overwhelmed is really many times the catalyst or the grist to get back to that open and loving and compassionate consciousness, you know, to kind of work through. We know when we get stuck that that we need to work through something, that we're caught somewhere, that our world has been reduced once again to a very kind of small and compartmentalized world, and that there's something that is disallowing us from softening ourselves, as with ocean, and letting that light out. You know, and in order to really bask in the beauty of the vista, you know, we really must carry the tools of our journey with us. You know, we can't put down the load and then pick it back up and then put it back down and pick it back up. You know, we really have to carry these tools with us, just like somebody climbing a mountain would carry, you know, their anchors and ropes and everything like that on their back. You know, so do we need these tools, so do we need to carry these things with us along on our path, you know. And it's not just for us, but it's for other travelers along the way, or people that are climbing that mountain as well, you know, to aid them. And that's why we have to carry these things, you know, on with us. A true person of no rank, you know, or really should I say a true person of light, you know, allows their light to shine forth endlessly. And to this person, there really is no true burden, you know, in this sense, you know, because they're willing and open and loving and see the necessity for the transgression or the necessity to carry the burden, you know. An ocean always kind of softening to you know, that call, always there, always softening, you know. Been with the teacher probably for a very long time, you know. Who knows, you know. Probably knows his teacher very, very well. They lived together for years and years and years, but, you know, he still sees the necessity to uphold the relationship, to carry the burden, to step into the mud with his teacher when asked, in order to, you know, in order to strengthen that foundation, in order to clarify and keep the practice sharp, you know, not just for them, but for everybody within the house, for everybody within the tradition, you know. So we do these things once again. It's not just for ourselves. It wasn't, you know, this koan or this manda was not just for Eshu and Ocean. It was for the whole. It was for all Zen practitioners, you know. And there really was no choice at all for Eshu or Ocean. You know, there was no choice. Master Echen had to call out. And, you know, Ocean had to respond. And I hope that you see that there's no choice for you either. And that when you see that there's truly no choice, it's not such a heavy burden, but a very willing endeavor and burden that we take upon ourselves, so that others may practice and others may experience this great love and compassion that is the result of this practice. I'd like to read a verse on gratitude. This is by Edo Roshi's Points of Departure, and it says, experiencing and expressing gratitude is an important part of our teaching. Japanese Buddhists call it hoan, or requiting beneficence. Let me explain a little of what this is. We cannot live alone. We need people's support. We need food to eat. We need air to breathe. We need water to drink, fire to heat. We need friendship. So many, many things. And yet we don't often express our gratitude when these needs are satisfied. For instance, it's not the particular ways in which parents support you that is important, but it is the fact that their support, that it is important. That fact should be recognized and felt by children as gratitude. A student should feel some sense of gratitude towards the teacher. Sometimes children cannot express the gratitude of their parents, but can care and concern to their children. Thus it is transmitted from one generation to another. I'd like to read this again. Sometimes children cannot express this gratitude to their parents, but can give care and concern to their children. Thus it is transmitted from one generation to another. To wind and water and food and other things, we should have a grateful attitude. First, let us reflect on our own work and the effort of those who brought us this food. This is the first line of the Mealtime Grace. Ananda said, "With my whole heart I shall serve all beings throughout the myriad worlds." This is Hoan, the expression of gratitude. If you are still setting limits of what you're willing to do and not do, what you're willing to give or not give, and you're not open to the moment as it unfolds, then you truly have not yet picked up the yoke. And this isn't to say that I'm implying that you go out and give away all of your worldly possessions or not set boundaries or anything along that lines. This isn't what I'm saying at all. There's a balance here. But if we're putting down the burden and picking it up due to egotistical concerns, then we truly are not carrying the burden at all. It's not when it's convenient that is not carrying the burden, and it seems a lot of Zen students like to do this. When it benefits them, they will carry the burden. When they're feeling bad, they will carry the burden. And it's no easy matter. They say that the trouble passes on to his descendant. The trouble, the burden, the tradition, the transgression, the mud, the muck, it passes on to his descendants, as Master Etches passed on to Osho and probably countless others who encountered either of them or their monastery or teachings. And it's you sitting before me, the ones with the rakusu and the cases, or the ones that have, taken the Bodhisattva's vow. It's really you who the burden has been passed on to. It's you who has willingly accepted the burden, lovingly accepted the burden, to do what needs to be done in order to not just liberate ourselves, but to liberate all sentient beings, to help all life find this love and this universal love that our hearts are so heavy for. All sentient beings, hearts are so heavy for. And it's really carrying on this tradition and sharing the fruits of this practice with the world around you, that we really begin to share the benefits of our efforts and the efforts of those around us with the world. Now, this isn't to say that we don't stagger, because we do, you know. Sometimes we take a step back, or sometimes we're not feeling strong, and the ego has to take the forefront, and we have to say, well, you know, I'm not feeling well, or I'm not feeling strong, or I'm feeling very stressed out. I don't think that, you know, I could, or I should, you know, run an event, or to do something out of the ordinary, or maybe you're sick or run down, and you really, you know, feel ill, like you shouldn't, you know, you should rest and not go into Zendo. You know, I'm not saying that somehow, you know, that these things are acts of somebody not carrying the burden. I'm not saying that at all. These things do happen, but it is our awareness and our true willingness to see through these and to move past them, and not to become stuck in them as though, you know, somehow we failed, or, you know, we weren't as open as we should have been, or weren't as compassionate and loving. You know, this is the as Edo would say, you know, the impossible dream. And we do the best that we can, and that's really key, and it's not something to be used lightly as an excuse either. Oh, well, I did what I could. You know, truly we should do what we can, and remain open to that calling, and be open to that echo, or that response, as much as possible. Even when inconvenient. So if we're honest really about our struggles, and we look to march onward, you know, then this is the ever-changing and unfolding burden of the yoke itself. So in closing, let me say this one thing. So if your world is narrow, you know, and you're consumed by you and yours, there will never be enough for others. It will always feel as though there is not enough, and you will continue to guard and protect what is not you and not yours. Open yourself completely, and let your inner light shine forth. Rinzai said, "The empty sky can neither expound the Dharma nor listen to it. Then just what can expound the Dharma and listen to it? This very you, standing before me without any form, just shining, this can expound the Dharma and listen to it."